Could you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you all for joining us this evening. Jody, could you call the roll, please?
Dennis,
Here.
Harold.
Here.
Hollenbaugh,
Here.
Odericio,
Here.
Phipps,
Here.
Robinette,
Here.
Urbando.
Here.
Okay, the minutes from our regular meeting on September 19th were distributed for your perusal prior to this evening's meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Okay, properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Jody, do we have any correspondence this evening?
Yes, we have two pieces this evening. Received from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control was an application for a D3 liquor permit for Lupita Mexican Taqueria LLC, doing business as Lupita Mexican Taqueria for 25 Wooster Street. Records have been requested. And secondly, distributed prior to the meeting from the Park and Recreation Department are two rate changes and a change to early access for building rentals. And this requires your approval with a motion, second, and a voice vote.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve these requests from the Parks Board?
I make a motion to approve the request from the Parks Department.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Is that all the correspondence?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to lobby visitations. Do we have anyone signed up for lobby visitation this
We
evening?
do. First, we have Peg Baker.
If you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Peg Baker. I live at 221 Everly Avenue. I don't know if I'm addressing the right body at this point. My question has to do with the aggregate natural gas provider for citizens. I didn't know if I should be looking on my own on the Apples to Apples site, or if the city is going to have a provider and you'll let the citizens know.
Do we have information on that? Okay, Mr. O'Connell will have that answer for you later on.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Emily Jerome.
And again, name and address for the record,
Hi,
please.
everyone. Thank you, Council. I'm Emily Jerome, and I live at 929 Thurston Avenue. And I just like to talk a little bit about this new legislation that Council will be proposing today. So I'm Vice President of BGSU College Democrats, and just last week we put on a Rally for Reproductive Freedom event with some help from campus and community partners. And at this event, we had over 130 students and BG affiliated community members come to support the rights that every individual has to make their own choices for their own bodies. And we put on this event to reflect the conversations happening at a national level right now. And this inclusive language in city proposed legislation would also reflect that legislation happening at a national level. And show that the city of Bowling Green is tuned into these conversations and listening and wants to be a part of this change. So our city has a huge population of college students because our city has Bowling Green State University. So defining words like sex in our own legislation is a way that we can create a safe, inclusive, welcoming, and secure community for those students who may feel a little left out just because of the situations that they're put in, because they're coming from different states or different cities coming to BG. So to show that BG is inclusive in the language that they use and is working to protect rights and freedoms for the individuals here would be pretty prominent to a lot of the friends that I've made in college. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Holly Gray Luring.
Again, name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Holly Gray Luring. I live at 1468 Devonshire Street, right here in Bowling Green. I'm going to kind of mirror a little bit of what Emily said. After Roe v. Wade was overturned, there was 6 of us suburban moms right here from Bowling Green that lined up at the Wood County Courthouse for a protest. And on those steps that day, there was a lot of, we were excited to be together and united as a whole, to have like-minded individuals together, but there was a lot of fear and confusion. So a lot of us were like, we really need to do something, but what is that we can do? We can stand here and protest and feel great all day, but when we walk away from these steps and we go back home to our homes, who's there to support us in a time of need and crisis? So I, like I said, I aligned with 6 moms, and literally overnight, I sent a couple of emails to some of our council people right here before us today. And I said, we want to do something. We don't know what that is. Would you at least meet with some of us? And with no delay, we met. So possibly tonight, when you hear the introduction of legislation tonight for the ordinance amending the city of BG's unlawful discrimination ordinance, you can kind of imagine that not only were 6 moms involved in planting that seed, there's over 250 members in Bowling Green Persists now. And it literally started one day after a coffee shop meeting, and within 2 weeks, we had over 200, and now we're definitely 250 strong. So with that being said, I was just going to read our mission statement that we decided to put together, just so we could have a vision, like, what is this? Although we stood together with reproductive rights at the forefront, a lot of other things, we started realizing there's so many other things that we align with and we support. And we just want freedom for everybody here in our community. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and read this. So I have what we put together together. We are a community group of like-minded individuals pursuing equality, safety, liberty, and freedom. Freedom to send our kids to school or parade without fear. Freedom to control and make choices privately over our own bodies. Freedom to get a college education. Freedom to obtain health care without fear of going broke. Freedom to be who we are and love who we love. Freedom to have access to affordable housing. Freedom in knowing that one job is enough. Our group is open to all persistent freedom fighters willing to stand together and fight the good fight in a strategic, creative, and peaceful manner. This group is filled with people from all branches of life. We stand together in unity and band together with our life experiences to fight for equality, safety, liberty, justice, and freedom for everyone. Our slogan is doing something for freedom. We just ask that you adopt this new language so we can provide freedom for everybody. We never know, like, all of the layers of life and how this affects people. And that's none of our business. We have our own personal stories. But we do want people to come into our community and feel safe here and feel supported. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Joyce Kep.
I feel fairly confident that Joyce knows how to do this.
Joyce Kepke, 1132 Lynn in Bowling Green. And I'm here to talk about the new zoning code. I've written to all of you. I wrote to members of the Planning Commission about my concern with the proposed pedestrian residential area. And I understand that it's been forwarded to you as it was originally proposed. And I want again to state my huge concern about the district that you're creating. It's a large district. It's from Poe to Sand Ridge, from the railroad over almost to Haskins on the west side. And it's composed of large historical houses, but many smaller, older homes that are owner occupied and rentals. They're the homes of many of our older residents and members of our community that cannot afford houses on the golf course or in the housing areas west of town, but who want to live in residential areas. When these houses were purchased, the people who live there now believe they were buying into residential neighborhoods and that our zoning laws protected those neighborhoods. Now you're proposing to take away that protection. The new zoning code will allow what is called neighborhood businesses in this district. And how is a neighborhood district defined? It includes a lot of things, medical services, who knows what that is, professional offices, what kind, barbershops, retail sales and services, corner stores. Someone commented that you'll be able to control what businesses open, but how will you control it as long as it falls under the loose term neighborhood businesses? We know we have a shortage of low-income and mid-income housing in Bowling Green. Our economic development people have told us a new homeowner or a first-time homeowner already has difficulty finding a home. Now the new district is no longer protected as a residential area. A new owner and owners that have lived in this area for years can suddenly find themselves with a business next door and no way to prevent it because the new zoning will say it's okay. Personally, I think it's a discrimination against older and lower income people who cannot afford large homes, who are being told, isn't it nice you can just walk down the street to the carryout or other business? If it's so nice, why isn't the whole town residential business, not just the older parts of town? And when you go to sell your nice neighborhood residence, your property is now next to a business. You can't tell me that someone looking for a new home will find that as desirable as it was before. Your property value has gone down. So I beg you to once again, please review the proposed zoning code and how this district fits into the mission of a zoning code. I believe that a large part of the mission of a zoning code is to give new owners and longtime home owners confidence that the city will protect their property values and keep businesses out of their neighborhood, no matter where they live in town. Who asked for this choice change to be made? I'm sure it wasn't the people who have homes in this area. I submit to you that the business you have hired to redo the zoning code does not live in Bowling Green, does not understand the difficulties of protecting property values in a college town. And it is your duty to make sure that what they have proposed really fits our community. I see no value in such a change, only problems. These changes are just wrong.
Thank you very much.
That's it.
That's all? Okay. That brings us to the introduction of new legislation.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
from the Finance Committee, I have an ordinance providing supplemental appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2022 and ending December 31, 2022.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Dorisio.
I have an ordinance from the Community Improvement Committee. It's the ordinance amending and adopting section 39.01 of the codified ordinances of the city of Bowling Green concerning unlawful discrimination.
Okay. That brings us to official reports. Mr. May.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, City Council. I have just a couple of items. Our road looks a little bit different tonight. This is a significant date. I want to once again say welcome to Hunter Brown, our new city attorney. Welcome him to officially his first council meeting. I'm just more than thrilled to have him on the job. So just a couple of other items. Some of you are likely aware, maybe heard about the fire that occurred in Bowling Green last week. There was a very, very frightening incident that occurred in town here. There was an apartment complex with approximately 20 units caught on fire. And the reason I bring this up is because I think that once again, we were able to witness the value, the professionalism and skill of our public safety services. As you can imagine, once the call came in, the fire division responded promptly and stabilized the situation. They were required to evacuate a good portion of the building, and there were a number of people in the building that had limited mobility. So it was a very frightening situation for a period of time. And again, I want to commend the fire division for their response. I also would mention that the police division played a very important role. They responded along with the fire division and provided logistical support, helped maintain traffic, and I think actually they helped evacuate some of the residents from the building. So I could not be more proud of our safety services and how they responded. But this was a community-wide response. As I mentioned, they quickly determined that they needed to evacuate the building. And when the call went out to Toby Snow, the Bowling Green City Schools transportation director, inquiring if they could help evacuate some of these residents, the response was an immediate yes. What do you need? Once it was determined what the situation was, Toby Snow and members of his staff responded to the site with buses and handicap accessible vans in some instances, and they were able to transport those residents over to the community center where the Red Cross had worked with city staff to set up a temporary shelter. But it didn't stop there. Once the apartment building was cleared for those residents that were able to return, Toby and his people transported the people back. So again, this is just an example of how Bowling Green comes together in a very challenging situation. And again, I could not be more proud of our police, our fire, Toby Snow, and everybody associated with the city schools. And this is just, to me, another example of what makes Bowling Green what it is, and it's a terrific place to live, and we should be thankful. I just don't want any of us to become complacent and not really appreciate the skill and professionalism and of our staff and the willingness of others in the community to pitch in when it's necessary. So I also wanted to mention we have begun the work of Downtown Forward in earnest. We had a very, very productive meeting with the steering committee last week, and I'm pleased to announce this evening, maybe you have on your desk in front of you, a notification of the first opportunity for members of the community to provide feedback and help us developing the vision for downtown Bowling Green. There's going to be the first community feedback session that's going to occur at the Veterans Memorial Building in City Park. And there's two sessions. The first one is October 18th from 8 to 9:30 a.m. And the second one will be on October 20th from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. So we really are hopeful that members of the community will turn out, participate, and help us together determine what our downtown is going to look like in the future. That concludes my report, subject to any questions that you may have.
Does anyone have any questions for the mayor this evening? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brings us to the municipal administrator, Ms. Treader. Are there questions for Ms. Treader this evening? Okay. The newly christened city attorney, Mr. Brown.
Good evening. Yeah, I was prepared to say no report in Mike Marsh tradition, but actually I do have an exciting announcement. We have hired Alyssa Blackburn as the new city prosecutor.
Great.
Alyssa comes to us from the Wood County Prosecutor's Office. She has about 9 or 10 years of experience. She is very well respected among all the law enforcement agencies. We have many law enforcement agencies here, and she already knows all the players. So she begins on the 17th, and I expect a very short transition time then. So, and that is my report.
Are there any questions for Mr. Brown? All right.
Thank you.
I like that you're not wearing a tie, but the jacket throws us a little bit.
Sorry.
Okay. Let's see. Mr. Fawcett is not here this evening. Public Infrastructure Director, Mr. O'Connell.
Good evening. I'll start with the gas aggregation program, since that was the question earlier. So yeah, we have selected a new gas supplier for the aggregation program, and it's going to be IGS Energy. They were our gas supplier for the program for many years until we switched, probably, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. The structure will be a little bit different than what we've done in the past. And by the way, there is a press release that was sent out earlier today for this, and customers will be getting a mailing that will outline what the program will look like here shortly. IGS will be the one that sends that letter out to those customers. But essentially from December 22 through March of 23, it's going to be a variable price, similar to what they have now with the Columbia Gas standard choice offer plan. The difference is that this will be a guaranteed 0.015 per CCF savings off of the standard choice offer plan. So the price may go up or down from what they I've seen from past months, but it'll be less than what they would pay with what they're currently buying today. After March, so April of 23 through November of 24, it'll be back to our traditional fixed price gas of 0.809 per CCF. That is a price increase, of course, from what we had before. Gas prices in the market has gone up, substantially in the last several months. And we chose these two options because the short-term gas market was pretty high and volatile, and it was affecting a longer-term price structure to get maybe a little bit lower price on the back end. So the best option we had was to take a variable price up front with a little bit of guaranteed savings off of the standard choice plan, and then try to get back to our fixed price option in the later months of the program. If customers don't like that option, they're free to go to the Apples to Apples website and find a gas supplier that might meet their needs better than what this program would offer. If they are in our program and they don't like it for some reason down the road, they're free to switch it at any time with no penalty. New customers typically can also be enrolled in the program if they get to us late, or if it's a new customer that moves into town, buys a house, and they need to set up a gas service. They also can typically join into the program if they want to opt in. The letter that IGS will be sending to customers is an opt-out letter. And so that means that the customer has to physically do something. They have to fill out the form at the bottom of the letter and mail it back to, I don't know if it's IGS or Columbia Gas maybe, but they have to take action to physically get out of the program. Otherwise, they're automatically into the program. If they have a current gas supplier under contract besides the standard choice offer that Columbia Gas has, then they would not be switched automatically because they've already got a commitment to another supplier. So if customers liked what we had offered before and they want to utilize this program, they basically have to do nothing, just keep paying their gas bill. And you'll see what they'll see on their gas bill is the supplier will change from Columbia Gas standard choice offer to IGS Energy. The price will also change to what IGS's price will be. And again, just keep paying the gas bill, and then you'll be in the program. So I hope that answers the question. Yes, you're welcome. Again, if you want to go to the website and look at the press release, there is information out on the website about the change. And again, IGS will be sending letters out to every customer. They get a mailing or a listing of all the Columbia Gas Ohio customers, and that's how they know who to send the letters to. So you should see that shortly. The other update I have for you is just on some of the construction projects around town. On East Worcester Street, the paving project, a lot of the area has been completed with surface course now. They've got a little bit of work yet to do yet this week. So they'll be paving throughout this week, hopefully, and hopefully done paving by the end of the week. Now, that doesn't mean that manhole adjustments and other valve box adjustments may need to be done. Striping will need to be done after that as well, but at least the surface course should be wrapped up mostly by the end of this week. On West Worcester Street, the contractor did start working here at Church Street and is going west. They're heading for Gorrell Road. I think I mentioned last time they're going to be doing sewer work first and then water possibly. They're actually doing water work now first, and then they'll come back once they get to Gorrell Road. They'll step back to Church Street, and they'll start the sewer work after that. So that's that part of it hasn't changed as far as the phasing goes from Church to Gorrell, and then Gorrell to Haskins, and Haskins to Wallace. that still stays the same. But that's all I have for you for now, unless you have questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. O'Connell this evening? Thank you very
Okay,
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to council committee reports. I have several here. Want to go ahead and announce yours?
Mr. President, I would like to announce Committee on Community Improvement meeting at 6 p.m. November 7th.
I think I failed to mention it when we had our committee of the whole meeting, but the bicycle map has been referred to the Planning Commission for their consideration. Tonight, after this meeting, there will be a public meeting, council of the whole meeting regarding the zoning code update. On Thursday of this week at 6 o'clock, there will be council's strategic planning meeting starting at 6 o'clock here in council chambers. I asked Jody earlier today to send out a copy of last year's goals to everyone. The first part of that meeting will be us discussing the goals from last year. And then before our next council meeting on October 17th at 6:15, there will be a finance committee quarterly update. So that's all I have unless somebody has something I missed. Okay. All right. So Jody, could you lead us in the reading of legislation?
Legislation for first reading. Ordinance number 9030 for first reading. Ordinance providing supplemental appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2022 and ending December 31, 2022.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
I move to suspend the rules and give ordinance 9030 its second and third readings.
Second.
Okay, properly moved and seconded. Jody, could you call the roll?
Harold.
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Rabando,
Yes.
Dennis.
Yes.
Okay, the rules are suspended for ordinance 9030.
Ordinance number 9030 for second and third readings. Ordinance providing supplemental appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2022 and ending December 31, 2022.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
I move to adopt ordinance 9030.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President, I think it's just remind everyone that these are all four appropriations for ARPA funds projects that we approved on.
Okay. All right, Jody.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Rabando,
Yes.
Dennis, Harold.
Yes.
Okay, so ordinance 9030 is adopted.
Ordinance 9031 for first reading. Ordinance amending and adopting section 39.01 of the codified ordinances of the city of Bowling Green concerning unlawful discrimination.
Mr. President,
Mr. Robinette.
if you'll indulge me for a moment, I'd like to ask a question either to the sponsoring committee or to Nick, whoever chooses to answer, but in full disclosure, I got a couple of questions I'd like to ask. They're a combination of mine and citizens, to be fair. So the first is, what problem or shortfall in the current chapter 39 are we trying to fix with this legislation? Because I reread it just as a reminder to everybody. The original legislation was approved on in August of 2009 and then amended and updated in June of last year. So what's the shortfall?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that if you don't mind. I think as was expressed by people who took time out of their day to come and speak in front of council, this was language that they asked for. Obviously they are not feeling that their rights are being protected under the current non-discrimination ordinance that we have. So if individuals in our community are not feeling protected by the current non-discrimination ordinance, I think it's our right and council to put forth legislation that makes sure they do feel protected and they do feel at home. And this is a community that is welcoming to them. I've always looked at Bowling Green as a welcoming community, and I think that this legislation does exactly that.
I guess the other part of that follow-on question is what part of the legislation doesn't already cover what's being sought?
Well, there isn't currently a definition of the term on the basis of sex.
Is there any, do you know how many complaints have been made against this chapter since it was first adopted?
I do not know that information. But I would say that, are there no complaints against it because it's out there? Are people, not discriminating against individuals because they know that Bowling Green has an ordinance that ensures that people don't discriminate against individuals? I mean, like that's kind of saying, there's laws that are in place, but no one's breaking them. Like, how do we know the laws are working? Well, because no one's breaking them.
Mr. President, I would like to answer that as well. So the laws perform duties beyond whether or not they get complaints. I can tell you for sure that in the first round of negotiations at Bowling Green, we referenced the city's non-discrimination laws, which were at the time more inclusive than the state laws. So we were able to reference Bowling Green's laws and get benefits for same-sex partners before same-sex marriage was legally an option. So the laws that we have enacted to be inclusive in the city have benefited people in the city and workers in the city. This new legislation will have benefits beyond whether there are complaints about the current legislation.
I will point out that the current the ordinance has 25 enumerated protected classes, which on my reading and some others seems to cover every possible type of category that could be out there. All right. Well, thank you for answering those questions.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Go ahead.
Legislation for second reading. Resolution 3835 for second reading. Resolution authorizing the municipal administrator to enter into a renewal of the agreement with the Wood County Public Defender. Resolution for second reading. Resolution number 3836. Resolution adopting and authorizing an amended Community Development Block Grant CDBG Housing Policy and Procedures Manual. Legislation for third reading. Ordinance number 9026 for third reading. Ordinance authorizing the utilities director to sell or trade electrical equipment no longer needed for municipal purposes.
I would like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 9026.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Jody?
Odericio,
Yes.
Phipps.
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Robando.
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold.
Yes.
Hollenbaugh.
Yes. Okay, ordinance 9026 is adopted.
Ordinance number 9028 for third reading. Ordinance amending section 158.03 and section 158.08 of the codified ordinances of the city of Bowling Green related to historic and architectural preservation.
Mr. President,
Ms. Phipps?
I move to adopt ordinance 9028.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Jody?
Phipps,
Yes.
Robinette,
Yes.
Robando.
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Harold.
Yes.
Hollenbaugh,
Yes.
Odericio.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 9028 is adopted. Is there any other business to come before council this evening? Okay, I will just make a note before we adjourn. What do you think? 10-minute break, 5-minute break? We're gonna take a 4.5-minute break. After which we will convene a council of the whole meeting for the purpose of discussing the city's zoning code. So
President.
Yep.
Move that we adjourn.
Second.
properly moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
And clock is started.
Oh, do we,
We're good.
we're not muted or anything?
We're good now.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask him.
Let's all just move our lips without saying anything. Confuse me.
That's generally a good idea.
Yep. Heather, would you like us to wait a minute or two then? Okay, we'll just get started and Nolan will pop up. Okay. So thanks for sticking around, everyone. This is our first meeting of several working sessions of the Committee of the Whole to work through our zoning code. By the end of this process, we should have an adoption draft that will be added to council's formal agenda. A quick thank you to everyone who has worked on this project so far. It has not been a small task. It started with the important planning we did, many years ago as a community. That involved lots of public input, lots of stakeholder involvement. And then most recently that involved a lot of great work by the Planning Commission, who worked through the draft, received tons of public comment, and had some really thoughtful discussions about this stuff. So I am so grateful for everyone's hard work and everyone that has contributed to get us to this point. And I'm excited to help get this across the finish line. Does anyone have any opening remarks before we get started?
Would like to just echo what you said. Say I'm incredibly impressed with the planning. They took the ball, they ran it. They went above and beyond my estimation. I wanted to call them out as a job well done.
Thanks, Bill. Anyone else? Okay. All right. So the plan is we're going to, over a couple working sessions, we're going to approach the various issues in the following order. We're going to tackle the zoning map draft first. Then we'll talk through the Planning Commission recommended changes. Then we'll talk through any changes suggested by individual council members. And then we'll turn back to the zoning map to make sure that none of our interim discussion changes anything for purposes of the map. Tonight, we are going to start with the map. Actually, I think what we'll do is start with ZoneCo and Nolan's suggested changes, which are mostly straightforward grammatical stuff. And then we'll turn to the zoning map at the end. So does everyone have copies of Nolan's suggested changes? Bill made a copy, Jody made a copy. There's a couple of copies floating around. So we're just going to start at the top. And I think what I'll do is make a motion and ask for a second, and then we'll have some discussion if any discussion is to be had. So the first change recommended by Nolan was to section 150.37 of the draft code. We're talking in terms of the June 1st draft tonight. He or they are proposing to change the cell for the R3 zone, the residential density cell from 24 units per acre minimum to 12 units per acre minimum to match the regulation in section 150.25.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Did I make?
No,
Mhm.
doing great. You always do great. I'm wondering if, since these are mostly adjustments in wording,
Mhm.
it might be more efficient,
Mhm.
at least to get an idea of if there are particular items that need discussion, flag those, and then all the other ones that aren't meant pass it.
Okay.
And that, of course, depends on how many people have issues with any of these. But if we get a gauge for that, that might speed things along a little bit and yet still provide us with what we need.
Okay. Anyone have a reaction to that? Hi, Nolan.
Hello there. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. That is one approach. We're just going to take a voice vote on these. So I could just reference the number and we could,
Okay.
You know, I mean, if you think it's sufficient not to actually read through them all, then I can just go through the cell one by one and we can take a voice vote on those. Do it that way?
You need a second.
I don't know. I'm looking for direction.
The committee, you're pretty much
Make whatever
work,
rules you
work
want.
the method that the best. suits you.
Okay, so then let's just say, looking at cell number, administrative change number 1, does anyone have any discussion there? Or are we okay to take a voice vote? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so administrative change number 1 passes. Administrative change 2 and 3 kind of work together. Any comment or discussion on 2 or 3? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, cell number 4 is just a simple, corrects a typographical error.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think it's important that we have at least one typographical error in the document. And this way.
Don't worry, we will.
Yeah, let's get rid of this one.
Okay.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, cell 5. Okay, this is actually something that we might need to discuss. In the definition of corner store, it was my reading of this change, Nolan or Heather, maybe you can help me, but that we wanted to ensure that, or the suggestion was that we ensure that the uses that are permitted in a corner store be allowed regardless of whether they are uses permitted in the district or zone at issue. Is that accurate, Nolan or Heather?
So yeah, this suggestion is just to make sure that that is clear. If
Either
that's
way.
the direction you want to go, either way.
Yeah.
I do think that the way that I wrote it, I'm just acknowledging the ambiguity of the way that I wrote it, does leave a little bit of ambiguity, and I didn't like that.
Okay. I mean, to me, well, so I've proposed language that would make clear that any of the commercial uses listed under corner store is permitted in a corner store, even if the specific use is not listed as permitted or conditionally permitted in the zone or district at issue. So I would move to amend in that way for the language I just handed out.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
refresh my memory on this, but does a corner store have to be on a corner?
Nolan?
Yes, it does. I'm going to pull up the language here and read it aloud to you if you'd like me to.
It's page 54, Bill.
Yeah, so a corner store use shall not be permitted on any lot unless such lot is a corner lot.
Oh, that's
And so the amendment that I'm proposing would be to D, section D on page 4.
A corner store use is limited to the following commercial uses. So the word limited is the word in question, I believe, for this suggestion.
Wait, Nolan, are you saying that the ambiguity is that you don't want to limit the commercial use that could take place in a corner store to those listed? Because
my ambiguity was that it doesn't say a corner store use may may include the following types of commercial uses. It just says it is limited to. So it's limited but it doesn't say that though it can be those by being permitted. So I think that word limited needs to be cleared up. So if you want to include only the following, it could say a corner store is defined as, only the following. if you want to say that it includes those and only those, if you want to say it includes those but may have other uses. But regardless, I think the key ambiguity is in that word limited.
Okay, so that's, and talking through this with Heather, I misunderstood that one. Okay, or I just messed that up myself.
Madam President, is it just, or Chair, sorry, gave you a promotion. The corner store is limited to at least one of the following commercials.
Yes. Doesn't have this, it doesn't have to have all of the commercial.
Or one or
uses.
more, at least one or more.
Right, but those are the uses that it can for. Cannot be for other uses besides those.
Right.
Or a corner store use may be one of the following.
One
in
or
which-
more of the following.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, that'd be fine, as long as it stipulates that it could be at least one, possibly more than one, but one or more does that.
I
don't
would
think we
recommend.
have to say one or more.
You get a recommendation.
Yep,
No,
Nolan.
I would recommend that language such as any of the following uses may constitute a corner store or something of that nature. No corner or no use other than the below listed uses may constitute a corner store use or something of that nature, so that it precludes any other use not listed.
This does that.
Good.
It's limited.
Right.
Not
Yes,
limited.
but I want to say that the following may constitute a corner store as well, because nothing says what a corner store may be. It says it's limited to the following, but what if those things aren't permitted elsewhere in the table, right? So that's what I wanted to clear up.
Yeah, so that's what I thought the initial issue was. That if, so for example, in, the university residential area, for example, artisan manufacturing perhaps isn't permitted as a listed use, but it would be permitted as a corner store use. Okay, so
Right.
then I'm back to my original language as proposed.
Based on your original, I think your original language accomplishes that not to do. So
Okay.
I support that.
So let's say that's a second. Any discussion? Further discussion?
I believe this says what you intended it to.
Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, and I do understand this, especially coming from some of the concerns that we've heard, is the language that I'm listing. It sounds like it's saying that these are some suggestions for a corner store, but really multiple different kinds of businesses can fit into what a corner store is. It's not saying that, because
Not if this language goes forward.
if the
It can only be
specific
one-
use is
any one of those
not
enumerated
listed as
1, 2,
permitted
3,
or
4,
conditionally.
5.
Well, 5 seems to me to give you a little bit more,
Right, but it's still enumerated.
Yes.
Okay,
So-
I mean,
a household service such
Even if the
as.
specific use is not listed as permitted or conditionally, so you're saying, all right, so you're saying even if those things are not listed as permitted in the zone, but it still has to fit in this, one of these 5 categories,
So you
correct?
remember, we'll get into more detail here in a future session, but remember the use table?
Mhm.
Okay, so the use table may permit a corner store in a district, but not permit artisan manufacturing in that district.
Mhm.
So that artisan manufacturing could have occurred district-wide, but we are permitting it in a corner store that would be limited in just corner.
Mhm. So is there going to be a time where we discuss kind of specific things that we wouldn't want? Because I think a lot of the problem is coming from like people saying, I don't want a vape shop in my neighborhood, or, I don't want a certain kind of store in my neighborhood. And I think that's where a lot of the issues are coming from, this updated zoning where individuals are saying, I don't want these kinds of things in my neighborhood.
Mhm.
Are we going to have an opportunity where we kind of look into those specific things as opposed to?
Yeah, yes, we will go through the use table in detail, just not tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yep.
sorry. So we do have the possibility that we have two stores next to each other. One is on a corner, one is not. They're right next to each other.
Mhm.
And the uses would be different between the corner store or right next.
Can we have a store that's
Yes.
not on
Yep.
a corner?
That's exactly what
Yep.
the result would be.
Interesting.
The non-corner store would be required to follow the zoning code. It's in. But it's,
I'm just trying to figure out what makes a corner store special.
It's on the corner.
I think that Nolan, or do you want to jump in here? I mean, to Nolan, go ahead.
Yeah. So why should a corner be permitted more uses potentially than a lot right next door that's an interior lot? And that's part of it is that people perceive corners as more fit for commercial uses than say an interior lot where they assume that things are going to be more residential. So we're permitting them more uses. There are limits to those uses. So for example, you say that they can't exceed 1,000 square feet, so they have to be small in size. They have to be on the first floor or the basement level. So there are limits to that. So customarily in towns, you would have stores on the corner where you may not have them on the interior of a block. So it's just based on custom, essentially.
I don't recall, how many districts does the corner store even appear in as the permitted use? Just two. So again, remember, we're not talking about every district.
Right. So it shows here on the use table, it appears in two districts. That's the PR, the pedestrian residential, and the UR, the university oriented residential.
And again, we'll get into where we're happy to place corner stores in a future working session. Right now, we're just talking, clearing up the language.
So basically we could approve this later on. We could.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Hmm.
Or just tweak where in town corner stores will be permitted.
On corner.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any more discussion? All in favor of this amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Thank you. So moving on, 6 is a straightforward spelling change. All in favor of making that change, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
What are the opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Or
Whatever your preference is.
okay.
Okay, so then we are now on cell 7. This is also language that I gave you because I just wanted it to be clear. So this is a straightforward change because parking structure is a defined term. Nolan is proposing to change this language. The beginning of the sentence at section 150.37 C4. Begin, parking on the major development site shall be within parking structures only. All in favor of that change, say aye.
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 Okay, all opposed? All right, moving on. We are now at cell 8. This is on page 50. I mean, this is a simple word change. Does anyone have any questions or discussion here? If not, all in favor of making the change proposed by cell 8, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay. Cell 9 is changing something from all caps to sentence case. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed. Cell 10 modifies spacing. removes a space in front of the word covenant in section 150.05 and adds a space after the comma. All in favor of that change, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, cell 11 makes a change to a table, I believe. On page 28. Yes, the Central Business District Standards table. You'll see in the rear yard setback language. We're talking in terms of the pedestrian residential district, but that should instead be any residential zone or district citywide. All in favor of that change, say aye.
Aye.
Yep.
Question. Right now it applies to where?
So right now, the rear yard setback changes in the event that the property in the central business district abuts the pedestrian residential district, but that is just a typo. Anytime, depending on, well, the pedestrian residential district will surround most of downtown, but I believe the change is requested because in the event there is a different residential zone or a different zone residence. So you'll see in several areas surrounding this arrest.
Yes.
Okay, so if there is a home, a residential property, yeah, but this is just talking in terms of the change that Nolan requested was that it be and Nolan, maybe you can talk us through this if I'm misspeaking.
Yeah, no, you're right on. So the downtown or the central business, district is surrounded by the pedestrian residential district as mapped right now. However, there could be a time where you change the map so that it actually borders, say, R3. And I wanted to make sure that you wouldn't at that time of changing the map for an area to R3 that borders the central business district, for you to also then at that point have to change the regulations surrounding the central business district rear yard. So by applying to residential districts, zones or districts overall, which is a defined term, residential zone or district, it's going to apply to R1, R2, R3, PR, and UR.
Excellent. Thank you.
All in favor of that change, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, thank you, Nolan.
I would also like to add, I'm sorry, but I'm going to write this in my notes that when I change PR district to residential district, I would actually change it to residential zone or district as we're having both. So I hope that also works for you.
Yes, please.
Okay. I'll put that in my notes.
Okay, so we're at cell 12. We're looking at a table on page 38. This table is 2 pages long. There's 2 changes necessary to this table. The first is changing the superscript on the front yard setback from C to D for the central business district. And the second is you'll see in the first cell with the pedestrian residential front yard setback, we're missing the term minimum there after 5 feet. So those 2 changes just correct an error in the table. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Cell 13 on Nolan's list of changes, we're going to save for when we go through the use table at a future meeting. So we're now on 14. This is adding clarity to the table on page 49. So if you see in the, oh gosh, where are we? The height of accessory use, and at the bottom, Heather and Nolan have requested that we change the language here from 0 to 12 feet and 13 feet to 18 feet. The first cell should be 12 feet max, and the second should be more than 12 feet, but less than 18 feet. Um, all in favor of that change, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Okay, and then we are now at cell 15. This is the same table. We have been asked to consider reducing the bottom two cells on the right-hand side to mirror those required side yard and rear yard setbacks for garages, which would be the second two cells from the top. So making the change to other accessory use to a 5-foot minimum and just mirroring this language, 5-foot minimum in the first bottom right-hand cell and 5-foot minimum, 0-foot minimum when adjacent to an alley. This is just going to give property owners more flexibility and again, mirror the garage standards. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Cell 16 corrects an error at section 150.71A1. The reference should be to code section 150.71C and not 150.71D. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we are now at cell 17. This is something that, so 17 and 18 talk in terms of section 150.71A3, which is found on page 68 of our draft code. And Heather or Nolan are going to have to help us here. The first cell, number 17, is suggesting that we could remove the definition of driveway from the text and leave it to the glossary. That's pretty straightforward. That would decrease the length of our code. There are some differences between, just very minor, there's like some language in parens that's in this page 68 definition that is not in the glossary definition. But that is pretty straightforward. And I think that the glossary is a good place for a definition. So all in favor of that change, say aye. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we will leave that change to you, Nolan.
Okay.
And then 18 talks in terms of the same section, and I'm not clear. Nolan, are you just suggesting as a solution here that we remove the final sentence of A3 that discusses leave the setback off altogether? Heather, was this your issue? Was this Nolan's issue?
I'm looking at
I
it.
think something may have got lost in communication
Okay.
because we did not want to remove the setback.
Okay.
All we were wondering is if we could make sure that it is clear that it should be an impervious surface. We've had some issues where people want to pave the property line and then call it the 3-foot setback because they won't park up to the setback.
Okay.
So I don't know if that makes sense, how I'm
Yep.
explaining that, but we would like that 3-foot setback there and to be an impervious surface. Really would like it to be grass, but I will leave that up to you, how you would like to word that. Again, looking for clarity. It's been an issue, so.
Yes.
So Heather, you're saying it would be something that water can get through,
Correct.
like grass.
Correct.
Would that be part of the driveway?
No.
Okay.
And it's what it is today. The minimum setback is 3 feet for residential property lines or property, and then commercial industrial is a 5-foot minimum setback. But we're not clear on what can be in that setback right now. We just say it has to be setback.
Okay, so what this does is prevents people from using the setback to extend their driveway.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Does anyone want to suggest language, or should we just move to approve this suggestion and leave the wordsmithing to Nolan?
I'm good with an impervious.
You're good with an
Yeah.
impervious setback?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I mean, but yeah, I don't think we need to draft it. Text draft.
so what? Okay. We are suggesting that the setback be pervious though. So you are agreeing that the setback should not be.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking, I was thinking driveway first.
Okay,
We're on the same.
so we're all on the same page that we agree that this change should be made, but we're going to leave the wordsmithing to
But do we want to make it more restrictive as Heather brought?
that it be actual grass instead of just some sort of
Heather was using that as
gravel.
an example.
Right.
Somebody might want to plant flowers. Don't know if we want to say specifically grass. Maybe we should say unpaved or.
Or pervious.
I mean, from a stormwater perspective, which would be the justification, pervious is anything. Yeah, something that is not going to send water and dust.
Well, how about this? You know the problems surrounding this and the way that people try to get around it. So why don't we leave it up to you to put language in there that will address the problem?
Okay,
So-
all in favor, say aye. Yes, sorry, Bill.
So just to be clear, would it be permitted with this change for them to put gravel? Yes.
So we actually consider stone right now an impervious surface. That's part of your lot coverage. Because you're only allowed to park on a hard dustless surface. And in our code now, when we added lot coverage, if you recall that to residential areas, we considered stone also. Now we're not looking at landscaping beds. It's stone that is related to parking. So right now a stone is not an impervious surface, or excuse me, pervious surface. It's an impervious surface. We include that in lot coverage.
So someone could have a stone driveway?
Not legally. It could be legal non-conforming from
Right.
several years ago.
Right. But
Mhm.
if it's not been there, they can't put it there.
Correct. Now, we do have some people that use it for a patio sometimes, and if it's for seating, that's fine, but we would still calculate that as part of the lot coverage.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Heather. All right, all in any more discussion? Okay, all in favor of the change proposed at cell 18, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. On page 69 is section 150.71D. Nolan, this section already towards the end at 4 and 5 refers to the figures on page 72. Are you just proposing to add some earlier references?
Correct.
Okay, I think that is fine. Does anyone want to discuss this or?
No.
I just think that's a little bit, okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That sounds like a good plan. Okay, we are now at cell 20. This corrects the misspelling. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Cell 21 removes misplaced parens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, and then 22 is also straightforward. We're correcting misspelling of the word beyond. All in favor of making that change, say aye. Okay, thank you. We are going to need you to talk to us about 23, Heather. If you could run up to the mic again. Sure. It's on page 94. So we're considering removing occupancy, as it's my understanding that Wood
Oh.
County issues occupancy permits. So we were wondering.
I think the way that's worded, it sounds a little more serious than we mean it to be.
Uh-huh.
I don't believe this is in our current code where we regulate occupancy as far as giving someone an occupancy permit. We don't do that. It's Wood County Building Inspection. So I was concerned that may cause confusion to somebody who were to grab this code and say, oh, I need an occupancy permit from the city. So that was my only concern. Doesn't mean that if you alter your property, that you don't have to come and get a permit, the actual structure. But I was concerned with causing confusion with that.
Okay. And so when it's in, A3, are we proposing that we just strike occupancy or the use of vacant land? Is that still something that would remain
I think it could. I
Uh-huh.
don't think, I can't think of a really straightforward answer for use of vacant land. Normally someone's building a structure or a parking lot.
So
You don't
you
issue
can't think of it
certificates
straight,
for
a
vacant
zoning
land now.
certificate. Uh-huh.
No. Mm-mm.
So we could strike all of
I believe
A3.
so, unless Nolan has any strong feelings on that.
I don't have any strong feelings on that.
Any other discussion? Okay, so I guess the motion would be to remove A3, which reads occupancy and use of vacant land
And renumber.
and renumber. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we will strike 3 and renumber. We are now at cell 24, which adds a part 8 at 150.92A that references our historic preservation and architecture code. All in favor of that change, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we are cell 25. This is something, Heather, I have a question on. It's section 150.110 on page 103. And the suggestion is to remove the language "and as soon as practicable after the acceptance of the annexation by council." What is the thinking here?
So right now, when the city receives an annexation from the county commissioners, council clerk holds that annexation for 60 days. While the clerk holds it, it goes to planning commission for review and public hearing.
Okay.
So this made the process even longer.
Oh.
It's out of order. I
Okay.
don't know if that's just something someone else does that maybe this came from, but we just wanted to mesh it with our current process instead of kind of putting it out of order, what it's been for decades. And this actually, I believe, doesn't follow the ORC, but I'm not 100% positive. I just know how we've done it following what the commissioners do.
Okay, so we're
So-
holding, we're not accepting.
Correct. Council is the last stop on making that decision. So it
Uh-huh.
doesn't make sense that planning commission would act after you've already acted.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I think it's just a process issue. We want to make it current and mesh with what we do now.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions for Heather? Okay, so then the motion is to remove the language, quote, "and as soon as practicable after the acceptance of the annexation by the council." All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? And then cell 26 is just a straightforward grammar change. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. So we are done with Nolan's proposed changes. So then let's just turn to the map. Planning Commission recommended 2 changes to the map. The first was at number 7 of Planning Commission's Excel sheet to change the proposed zoning map for Trinity United Methodist Church at 200 North Summit Street from pedestrian residential to institutional. They recommended that change by vote of 9-0. So I would move to make that change. Is there any discussion? Okay, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. That change is accepted. The second change recommended by Planning Commission with regard to the map was changing the the name of the neighborhood commercial zone to limited commercial zone. As a reminder, the neighborhood commercial zone is this darker pink. I don't know if anyone has any discussion on this change, proposed change.
What is your title this evening, Madam Chair? Neighborhood commercial zone seems to me to be just commercial. It is neither in a neighborhood nor is it limited. We're talking about Kroger, Big Lots, Walmart. Those are commercial zones. So I guess I would favor just calling it commercial. Seems to be the simplest approach.
How is it currently limited?
Yeah, I mean, so there are certainly prescribed uses and conditional uses, or excuse me, permitted uses and conditional uses in the neighborhood commercial zone that are in the use table starting on page 37. So, I mean, there are limits to the commercial activity that can appear or
On page 37.
yeah.
Thank
That can occur, excuse me, in that zone. But there is no commercial zone in addition to this limited or neighborhood commercial zone. So I'm kind of in favor of dropping the modifier in front of commercial too. But I don't feel strongly. Anyone else?
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
So right now, we're not changing anything about the use. We're just changing the name.
Yep.
And I apologize, maybe I missed this, but did Planning Commission provide an explanation as to the name change?
What was the Planning Commission's discussion? Anyone?
We could ask the chair.
We could ask Bob.
Thank you.
Okay.
The main objection to the naming as it currently is the word neighborhood. Because it gave the impression, as I think Mr. Rabonda was saying, that these zones are in the middle of residential neighborhoods, and they're not. They're the Walmart, the car dealers on the north end of town, all sorts of things like that. I have no particular preference for commercial versus limited. I came up with the notion of limited commercial because there are limits in that you can't just use any use in the commercial zone. There are things that are out of bounds. So to my mind, that was limited. Whether you call it limited or just limited commercial or just commercial makes a little difference. The main objection is to get the word neighborhood out of there. It was obvious from comments we received from members of the public that word neighborhood confused a lot of people. And it's just to it's a cosmetic change, as was suggested. It's not a substantive change to the uses. It's a cosmetic change, but I think it would be helpful.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
I could point out one more thing. We also have in the use table, limited commercial mentioned as a specific use category, which is defined as the sale of goods and services which are geared towards either residents living within a specific area or a larger marketing area. We do use that term twice. I guess I wonder if there's any potential for confusion there.
Yeah, what page are
or
you on?
inconsistency. 112 is where it's defined. The use table has it listed on page 44.
I would imagine if we changed it to whatever we changed it to, we would listen.
Yes, I see it.
And so it appears, it's a defined term in the glossary, you're saying, and then it also appears, limited commercial appears in the use table. Is that what you said, Jeff?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, so that is confusing. Yeah. Okay. So then I feel more strongly that there should be no modifier before commercial. We should just rename this the commercial zone.
I support that.
Any other discussion here? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we'll just call it the commercial zone. Okay, that brings us to the end of Planning Commission's suggested changes for the map that we're going to get to tonight. Does anyone else have anything separately that they want to talk about the zoning map before we wrap this working session?
No, I mean, I would just say that, there's the likelihood that we might make changes later on that will impact the map. So it's not like we're approving a finalized map.
That's right.
We're just agreeing this is the map we're going to work off.
Yep. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much for sticking around. This ends our first working session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, if an Applebee wants to go in.
That
They
should
are
be
in,
its own
they're
spot on the
in, yeah, they're a neighborhood. And
Very efficient.
45 minutes exactly.
Good work, Rachel.
Actually, a little under.
Clint was interviewing Brian McConnell
See you,
after
man.
the council.
Good way through it.
about the
Good work
gas
today.
aggregation. I'm thinking, I don't know how it can do that. That's for 5